Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats reread podcast. My name's Coffee, your host, and today we're going to be reading chapters 12 through 15 of Rising Storm. Now, where we last left off, Cloudpaw got abducted by Two Legs, which was kind of his own fault, and we left off right as Fireheart and Sandstorm spotted him in the back of a two-leg monster. So, we're going to pick up right where we left off. Chapter 12 starts with, quote, "Help! Don't let them take me!" Fireheart heard Cloudpaw's desperate yowling above the noise of the roaring monster. The two-leg took no notice. It clambered into the monster with Cloudpaw and slammed the door shut. In a cloud of choking fumes, the monster pulled away and headed up the thunderpath. "No! Wait!" Fireheart ignored Sandstorm's cry as he dashed out of the passageway and pelted after the monster. The rough stone path tore at his pads, but as fast as he ran, the monster went faster, until it rounded a corner and disappeared from view. Fireheart skidded to a halt, his paws stinging and his heart pounding. Sandstorm called to him again. "Fireheart, come back!" Fireheart glanced in despair at the empty thunderpath where the monster had stood just moments before, and then hurried back to Sandstorm. Numb with shock, he blindly followed Sandstorm as she led him along the passageway, past the nest, through the garden, and over the fence into the safety of the woods. "Fireheart!" Sandstorm gasped when they landed on the leafy forest floor. "Are you okay?" Fireheart couldn't answer. He stared at the blank fence, trying to take in what he had just seen. The Two Legs had stolen Cloudpaw. Fireheart couldn't block out the look of fear on the young cat's face. Where were they taking him? Wherever it was, Cloudpaw hadn't wanted to go. "Your pads are bleeding," murmured Sandstorm. "He got his period." No, it's his paw pads. Fireheart lifted a foreleg and turned over his paw to look. He gazed blankly at the oozing blood until Sandstorm leaned forward and began to lick the grit from his wounds. It stung, but Fireheart didn't protest. The rhythmic licks comforted him, stirring long-distant memories of kithood. Gradually, the panic that had frozen his mind began to melt away. "He's gone," he meowed dismally. His heart felt like a hollow log, ringing with sorrow at every beat. "He'll find his way home," Sandstorm told him. Fireheart looked at her calm green eyes and felt a flicker of hope. "If he wants to," she added. Her words pierced him like thorns, but her eyes were full of sympathy, and Fireheart knew she was only speaking the truth. "Cloudpaw might be happier where he's going," she meowed. "You want him to be happy, don't you?" "Well, girl, he certainly didn't seem very happy getting taken by that two-leg. I don't know if you saw, but not great." Fireheart nodded slowly. "Come on, then. Let's get back to camp." Sandstorm's mew became brisk, and Fireheart felt a surge of frustration. "It's easy for you," he argued. "You share clan blood with the rest of them. Cloudpaw was my only kin. Now there's no one in the clan that's close to me." Sandstorm flinched as if he had struck her. "How can you say that? You have me," she spat. "I've done nothing but try to help you. Doesn't that mean anything? I thought that our friendship was important to you, but clearly I was wrong." She spun around, flicking Fireheart's legs with her tail before racing away into the trees. Oh my god, their first fight! The tension. So Fireheart is shocked by her response, but he begins the trek back to camp, already imagining Darkstripe gloating over Cloudpaw leaving. He stops to catch a mouse and returns to camp as the sun sets even further. The clan is sharing tongues as he enters. Mousefur meets him and remarks on his absence, noting that Whitestorm arranged patrols in his absence. Whitestorm is more of an acting deputy than Fireheart is at this point. Fireheart thanks her, trying to convince himself that Cloudpaw's loss doesn't mean he's completely alone. Most cats accept him, but it's unclear if StarClan does. He wonders if StarClan took Cloudpaw away to punish the clan for taking in kitty pets. He drops his mouse on the Freshco pile, noticing Sandstorm glaring at him. He notes to himself to apologize later, but first he needs to tell Bluestar about Cloudpaw. Quote, Fireheart crossed to the leader's den and called a greeting at the entrance. He was surprised when Whitestorm's voice answered. He poked his head through the lichen and saw Bluestar curled in her nest, her head up and eyes shining as she shared tongues with Whitestorm. For once, the ThunderClan leader looked like any other warrior, enjoying the company of a trusted friend. And as he saw the contented expression on Bluestar's face, Fireheart shied away from disturbing her with his bad news. He'd tell her later. "She'll notice eventually. Just tell her, bro." "Yes, what is it?" asked Bluestar. I just wondered if you were hungry," Fireheart stammered. "Oh." Bluestar sounded puzzled. "Thank you, but Whitestorm brought me something." She dipped her head toward the half-eaten pigeon that lay on the floor of her den. Fine, I'll leave you to eat it then." Fireheart quickly backed out before she could ask what he had been up to. He returned to the Freshco pile, picked up the mouse he'd caught earlier, and carried it toward the nettle clump where Sandstorm and Running Wind lay. Sandstorm looked away when she saw him coming and busied herself with tearing the wings off her Freshco. Fireheart dropped his mouse onto the ground. "Hi there," Running Wind greeted him. "I thought you were going to miss mealtime." Fireheart tried to purr a friendly reply, but his answer came out hoarsely. Busy day. Running Wind glanced at Sandstorm, who was still ignoring the clan deputy, and Fireheart thought he saw the lean warrior's whiskers twitch. Sorry about earlier, Fireheart whispered to Sandstorm. So you should be, she muttered, not looking up. You've been a good friend, Fireheart persisted. I'm sorry I made you think I don't appreciate you. Yeah, well, next time try thinking beyond your own whiskers. She's right, she should say it. Are we friends again? Fireheart meowed. We always were, she replied simply. Relieved, Fireheart lay down beside her and began to crunch on his mouse. Running Wind hadn't uttered a word, but Fireheart noticed that his eyes were glowing with amusement. His interaction with Sandstorm was obviously attracting attention from the other warriors. Fireheart felt a self-conscious prickle ripple through his fur, and he looked awkwardly around the clearing. Darkstripe was sitting in front of the apprentice's den, talking to Ashpaw. Fireheart wondered why he was speaking to Dustpelt's apprentice instead of sharing a meal with the other warriors. Ashpaw was shaking his head, but the dark tabby warrior carried on talking until Ashpaw lowered his eyes and began to pad across the clearing toward the nettle patch. Fireheart's ears twitched. From the way Darkstripe was watching the young gray apprentice, he could tell something was up. Ashpaw stopped in front of Fireheart, his small body stiff and his tail flicking nervously. Is something wrong? Fireheart asked.
I was just wondering where Cloudpaw was,
mewed Ashpaw.
He said he'd be back by mealtime.
Fireheart gazed back at the apprentice of the dark tabby who watched them closely, his amber eyes glinting with undisguised interest. Tell Darkstripe that if he wants to know, he should ask me himself, he snapped. Ashpaw flinched.
I'm sorry,
he stammered.
Darkstripe told me...
The apprentice shuffled his paws and suddenly looked up, staring Fireheart straight in the eye.
Actually, it's not just Darkstripe who wants to know. I'm worried too. Cloudpaw promised he'd be back by now.
The gray apprentice hesitated, glancing away, and finished.
Whatever else he might do, Cloudpaw always keeps his word.
Fireheart was amazed. It had never occurred to him that Cloudpaw could have earned the respect and loyalty of his denmates like any other warrior. But what did Ashpaw mean by whatever else he might do? Have an attitude? Eat kitty pet slop? Not listen? Use your brain, Fireheart. But this indicates that Ashpaw probably knows that Cloudpaw has been visiting Two Legs. Cloudpaw, if you're going to go against the warrior code, you need to be a lot more secretive than that, buddy. But that's the end of chapter 12. It was a short one. Going right into chapter 13. Quote,
Is Cloudpaw okay?
asked Ashpaw. Fireheart blinked while he searched for the right words to explain Cloudpaw's disappearance. I believe Cloudpaw has left the clan, he murmured at last. There was no point trying to hide what had happened. Ashpaw's eyes grew wide with shock and bewilderment.
Left?
He echoed.
But he would have told us. I mean, I never thought he'd stay there.
Stay where? Asked Running Wind sharply, sitting up. What's going on? Ashpaw glanced guiltily at Fireheart, knowing he had betrayed his friend's secret. Go back to your supper, Fireheart meowed gently. You can tell Darkstripe that Cloudpaw has returned to his kitty pet life. There's no need for secrets anymore.
I just can't believe he's actually left,
mewed Ashpaw sadly.
I'll really miss him.
He turned and plodded back to the apprentice's den, where Darkstripe sat waiting like a hungry owl. The news would be all through the camp by sunset. Where has Cloudpaw gone? Demanded Running Wind, turning to Fireheart. He's gone back to live with Two Legs, Fireheart replied, each word dropping like a stone into the sultry forest air. His ears still rang with Cloudpaw's heartbreaking cries for help, but Fireheart couldn't see that it would do any good to start making excuses for his errant apprentice. How could he convince the clan that Cloudpaw had been taken against his will, when they would all remember that the apprentice had been growing fat from Two-Leg offerings? Running Wind frowned. Darkstripe is going to enjoy hearing that. The tabby warrior was already staring triumphantly across the clearing as he leaned down to listen to Ashpaw's news. With a sinking feeling, Fireheart watched as he trotted over to Longtail and Smallear, and the news of Cloudpaw's disappearance began to spread through the clan like tendrils of dark, clinging ivy. Smallear squeezed between the branches of the oak to share the news with the other elders, while Longtail nodded at his former mentor and headed toward the nursery. Just as Fireheart had feared, Darkstripe was making sure the whole camp knew that Fireheart's kin had returned to his kitty pet roots. Jobless behavior, bro. Aren't you going to do anything? Asked Sandstorm, her voice sharp with indignation. Are you going to leave it to Darkstripe to tell the clan about Cloudpaw? Fireheart shook his head. How can I fight the truth? He meowed sadly. You could speak to the clan, snapped Sandstorm. Explain what really happened. Cloudpaw rejected clan life as soon as he started accepting kitty pet food, Fireheart pointed out. Well, you should at least tell Bluestar, Sandstorm urged. Too late, murmured Running Wind. Fireheart followed the brown warrior's gaze and saw Darkstripe padding toward Bluestar's den. She was going to have her evening disturbed when she needed peace more than anything else. Fireheart thrashed his tail at Darkstripe's selfish spite, although he knew that most of his anger was directed at Cloudpaw. Come on, you might as well eat your supper, meowed Sandstorm, more gently now. I love how the cats have a concept of supper. But Fireheart had no appetite left. He could only stare around the clearing, returning the glances of the other clan cats, some anxious, some just greedily curious, as they learned of Cloudpaw's desertion. Running Wind's tail flicked one of Fireheart's hind legs. Look out. Darkstripe was heading toward them with a smug expression he didn't even try to hide. "Bluestar wants to see you," he meowed loudly to Fireheart. With a resigned sigh, Fireheart stood up and made his way to the ThunderClan leader's den. He hesitated at the entrance, feeling a flicker of anxiety. It seemed inevitable that Bluestar would see Cloudpaw's disappearance as yet another betrayal by a ThunderClan cat. Did this mean she would start to doubt Fireheart as well, because of his kitty pet origins? "Girl, she made you the deputy. I think she trusts you." "Come in, Fireheart," Bluestar called. "I can smell you lurking out there." He pushed through the lichen. Bluestar was curled in her nest with Whitestorm beside her, his eyes wide with curiosity. Fireheart pricked his ears, trying to stop them from twitching and betraying his nerves. "So that's why you came to see me earlier," meowed Bluestar. "Wondering if I was hungry indeed." Fireheart was caught off guard by the amused purr in her voice. "You only usually offer to bring food to my den if you think I'm dying. You had me thinking there was a rumor going around the camp that I was on my last legs." Fireheart couldn't believe that she was taking the news about Cloudpaw so calmly. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I was going to tell you about Cloudpaw, but you seemed so peaceful. I didn't want to upset you." "I may not have been feeling well lately," Bluestar acknowledged with a dip of her head, "but I'm not made of cobwebs." Her blue eyes grew serious as she went on. "I am still your leader, and I need to know everything that's going on in my clan." "Yes, Bluestar," answered Fireheart. "Now, Darkstripe tells me that Cloudpaw has gone to live with Two Legs. Did you know this might happen?" Fireheart nodded. "But not until recently," he added. "I only found out yesterday he was visiting a two-leg nest for food." "And you thought you could sort him out by yourself," murmured Bluestar. "Yes," Fireheart glanced at Whitestorm, who watched in silence, his old eyes missing nothing. "You can't tell a cat what his heart should feel," Bluestar warned. "If Cloudpaw's heart longed for a kitty pet life, then not even StarClan can change him." "I know," Fireheart agreed. "But it's not as simple as that." He didn't want to excuse Cloudpaw's behavior to the rest of the clan, but he wanted Bluestar to know the whole story. Although whether that was for Cloudpaw's sake or his, he wasn't quite sure. "He was taken away by the Two Legs against his will." "Taken away?" echoed Whitestorm. "What makes you say that?" "I saw him being carried off inside a monster," Fireheart explained. "He was crying out for help. I chased after him, but there was nothing I could do." "But he'd been accepting food from these Two Legs for some time," Bluestar reminded him, narrowing her eyes. "Yes," Fireheart admitted. "I spoke to him about that yesterday, and I'm not sure he really wanted to live a kitty pet life. He seemed to still think of himself as a clan cat." Fireheart swallowed uncomfortably. "I don't think Cloudpaw understood how far he was breaking the warrior code." "Are you sure he is the sort of warrior that ThunderClan needs?" asked Bluestar. Fireheart lowered his eyes, ashamed of his apprentice and recognizing the truth in Bluestar's words. "He's still young," he meowed quietly. "I think he has the heart of a clan cat, even if he doesn't realize it himself yet." "Fireheart," Bluestar's mew was gentle. "ThunderClan needs loyal, brave cats like you. If Cloudpaw was taken, then perhaps it was what StarClan intended. He may not be forest-born, but he has been part of our clan long enough for our warrior ancestors to take an interest in him. Don't be too sad. Wherever he has gone, StarClan will make sure he finds happiness there." Fireheart raised his eyes slowly to his old mentor. "Thanks, Bluestar," he meowed. He wanted to believe that StarClan had Cloudpaw's best interests at heart, that they weren't punishing the clan or signaling their disapproval of kitty pets by sending the apprentice away. He wasn't entirely convinced, but he was grateful to the clan leader for her sympathy, and heartily relieved that she hadn't read any darker message into Cloudpaw's disappearance. So there's a bit of a time skip. That same night, Fireheart has another dream. He's standing on the great rock in the middle of 4 trees. He senses Spotted Leaf's presence, of course, and she calls his name, but he can't see her. She tells him to beware an enemy who seems to sleep. He asks for clarification, but she simply says, "Beware," again, and then he jolts awake in his nest. So, that's super cryptic, super awesome. Upon waking, Fireheart notices Darkstripe's ears are pricked and alert, despite his eyes being closed. Fireheart thinks a message about Darkstripe would be redundant. He already knows Darkstripe's not trustworthy. He thinks Spotted Leaf's warning must be about something else that he isn't aware of. So he can't really go back to sleep, so he sits in the middle of camp and looks at the stars, pondering. He remembers the 6 ShadowClan cats. Cinderpelt said she had cured them, but maybe she really hadn't. He becomes more convinced that Spotted Leaf was warning him about the sickness spreading into ThunderClan. He decides he has to check with Cinderpelt to make sure she really did cure them. So he races across to the medicine den, hissing Cinderpelt's name to wake her. Quote, "Is that you, Fireheart?" she mewed sleepily. "Cinderpelt," Fireheart hissed again, loud enough to make the gray cat open her eyes. She squinted at him, then slowly rolled onto her belly and lifted her head. "What is it?" she asked, frowning. "Are you certain that the ShadowClan cats are really cured?" Fireheart demanded. He kept his voice low, even though he knew Yellowfang would not be able to hear him from inside her den. Cinderpelt blinked in confusion. "You woke me up to ask me that? I told you yesterday, they're getting better." "But they're still sick?" "Well, yes," Cinderpelt admitted, "but not nearly as sick as they were. And what about you? Do you have any signs of the sickness? Have any of our cats come to you with fever or pain?" Cinderpelt yawned and stretched. I'm fine, she mewed. The ShadowClan cats are fine. ThunderClan is fine. She shook her head wearily. Everybody's fine. What in StarClan is worrying you? I had a dream, Fireheart explained uncomfortably. Spotted Leaf came and told me to beware an enemy who seems to sleep. I think she means the sickness. Cinderpelt snorted. The dream was probably warning you not to go waking poor old Cinderpelt, who's had a really long day, or you might get your whiskers pulled. She's got jokes. She's so funny. Fireheart realized she looked exhausted. She must have been even busier than usual lately, carrying out her duties in the camp, as well as caring for Little Cloud and Whitethroat. I'm sorry, he meowed, but I think the ShadowClan cats have to leave. Cinderpelt opened her eyes fully for the first time. You said they could stay till they were completely better, she reminded him. Have you changed your mind because of this dream? Spotted Leaf has been right before, Fireheart answered. I can't take the risk of letting them stay. Cinderpelt stared at him wordlessly for a moment, then mewed. Let me speak to them. Fireheart nodded. But you must do it tomorrow, he insisted. Cinderpelt rested her chin on her front paws. I'll tell them, she promised. But what if your dream was wrong? If ShadowClan is as riddled with the sickness as they say it is, you could be sending these cats to their deaths. Fireheart felt his breath catch in his chest, but he knew he had to protect his own clan. You can show them how to make the healing mixture, can't you? He suggested. Cinderpelt nodded. Okay, Fireheart went on. If you do that, they'll be able to take care of themselves, maybe even help their clanmates. The thought that he was not totally abandoning the desperate ShadowClan cats came as a relief, but he still felt the need to explain why he was turning them away. Cinderpelt, I have to listen to Spotted Leaf. A hard lump of sadness choked him into silence. The scent of ferns around him made the memory of the medicine cat even sharper, for this was where she had lived and worked. You talk about her as if she's still alive, murmured Cinderpelt, closing her eyes. Why can't you let her rest with StarClan? I know she was special to you, but remember what Yellowfang said to me when I couldn't stop thinking about Silverstream. Put your energy into today. Stop worrying about the past. She's just saying what we're all thinking. What's wrong with remembering Spotted Leaf? Fireheart protested. Because while you're dreaming about her, there's another cat, a living one, right under your nose whom you should be thinking about instead. Fireheart stared at Cinderpelt, puzzled. What are you talking about? Haven't you noticed? Noticed what? Cinderpelt opened her eyes and lifted her head. Fireheart, every cat in the clan can see that Sandstorm is very, very fond of you. Oh, my sweet summer child, my sweet autistic son. Just not picking up on those social cues. Fireheart felt a hot flush spread through his fur, and he started to protest, but Cinderpelt ignored him. Now go away and let me rest, she muttered, resting her chin on her paws once more. I'll tell Little Cloud and Whitethroat to leave tomorrow, I promise. By the time Fireheart reached the fern tunnel, he could hear Cinderpelt's gentle snoring mingling with the steady rasps of Yellowfang. His mind was still reeling as he padded into the clearing. He knew Sandstorm liked and respected him, far more than he would ever have expected when he first joined the clan, but it had never occurred to him that she felt anything stronger than friendship for him. Suddenly he pictured the soft sparkle in her pale green eyes when she had licked his stinging paws, and his fur began to prickle with a sensation he had not felt before. Oh, he's a freak! He's a freak! But finally he's, noticing that she's paying attention to him. Stop pining over your dead crush. She's not even your girlfriend, bro. She's not gonna let you hit, bro. Alright, that's the end of chapter 13. Getting into chapter 14. Over the next few days, the streams dwindle in ThunderClan territory until the only water to be found is near the RiverClan border, and close to where Cinderpelt sheltered the ShadowClan cats. Fireheart worries about cats getting sick, but is grateful for the distraction from worrying about Cloudpaw. The Sun High Patrol returns, and Frostfur is organizing a group of elders and queens to go to drink from the river. Quote, Why would StarClan send such a drought now? Smolier complained. Out of the corner of his eye, Fireheart saw the old Grey Tom glance in his direction, and he remembered with a shiver the elders' warning about the broken rituals. It's not the dryness that bothers me, rasped One Eye. It's all the two-legs out in the forest. I've never heard so many crashing around, scaring off the prey, and ruining our scent markers with their stench. A bit of rain might drive them away. Well, I'm worried about Willowpelt, meowed Speckletail. It's quite a journey to the stream and back, and she doesn't like to leave her kits for so long. But if she doesn't drink, her milk will dry up, and her kits will starve. Golden flower, too, Patchpelt put in. Perhaps if we each carried back moss soaked in water, they could lick the moisture from that, he suggested. That's a great idea, Fireheart meowed. He wondered why he hadn't thought of that himself. Perhaps he had been trying to put the nursery, and one kit in particular, out of his mind. Can you bring some back today? The old black and white Tom nodded. We'll all bring some, offered Speckletail. Thank you. Fireheart blinked gratefully at her. He couldn't help thinking with a pang of regret how eagerly Cloudpaw would have volunteered to help the elders. He'd always been particularly close to them, listening to their stories at night, and sometimes even sharing their meals. It stung Fireheart, if he let himself think about it for too long, that the elders hardly seemed to notice Cloudpaw's absence. Was Fireheart the only cat in ThunderClan who thought Cloudpaw could have adjusted to life in the forest? He shook his ears irritably. Perhaps Bluestar was right, and the young cat had made the right decision to leave. But it didn't stop Fireheart from missing him with an unexpected intensity. He called to Sandstorm and Brackenfur, who were resting in the shade of the nettle patch after the Sun-High patrol. They leaped up at once and trotted over to him. "Would you escort Small-Ear and the others?" Fireheart meowed. "I don't know how close to the river they'll have to go, and they'll need some backup if they bump into a River Clan patrol." He paused. "I know you're tired, but the other cats are out training, and I need to stay with Whitestorm to guard the camp."
"No problem,"
meowed Brackenfur easily. "I'm not tired, Fireheart," insisted Sandstorm, fixing him with her leaf-green gaze. Fireheart's paws tingled as he remembered what Cinderpelt had told him a few nights ago. Great," he meowed a little too loudly. He began washing his chest self-consciously, his licks becoming brisker as he noticed that Brackenfur's whiskers were twitching with amusement. "Real subtle, Fireheart. Autistic cat realizes that someone has a crush on him and doesn't know how to act." So as the group leaves, Fireheart notices Tiger Claw's kit toddling around with Goldenflower, encouraging him. He still avoids its gaze. He hopes the group wouldn't have to go all the way to the river, and then remembers the 6 Shadow Clan cats. What if they were still there? He decides to check with Cinderpelt again, running to the medicine den and bumping right into her. Quote, "What's the matter with you?" she mewed cheerily, and then she looked at the frown on Fireheart's face and her expression changed. "Did you tell Little Cloud and Whitethroat they must leave?" Fireheart whispered urgently. "We've been through this already," Cinderpelt sighed impatiently. "Are you sure they've gone? They promised to leave that night." Her blue eyes challenged Fireheart to argue with her. "And there's no stench of sickness left," he persisted, his fur pricking with worry. "Look," she snapped. "I told them to leave and they said they would. I don't have time for this. There are berries to be collected, and the birds will get them if I don't. If you don't believe me about the Shadow Clan cats, why don't you check for yourself?" A low yowl came from the medicine cat's den. "I don't know who you're mewing at out there, but stop it now and go and fetch those berries." "Sorry, Yellowfang," Cinderpelt called over her shoulder. "I'm just talking to Fireheart." Her eyes flashed accusingly at him as Yellowfang's voice sounded again. "Well, tell him to stop wasting your time, or I'll have me to answer to." Cinderpelt's shoulders relaxed and her whiskers twitched with amusement. Fireheart felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry to keep going on about it, Cinderpelt. It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that You're just a fretful old badger," she told him, nudging him affectionately on his shoulder. "Go and check out the root cave for yourself, if you want to put your mind at rest." She brushed past him and limped toward the camp entrance. Cinderpelt was right. Fireheart knew he would be satisfied only once he'd seen the ancient oak himself to make sure it was free of both Shadow Clan cats and sickness. But he couldn't leave now. He and Whitestorm were the only warriors in the camp. His fur itching with frustration and worry, Fireheart began to pace the clearing. As he turned below the high rock to retrace his steps yet again, he spotted Whitestorm padding toward him. "Have you decided on the evening patrol yet?" called the White Warrior. "I thought Running Wind could take Thornpaw and Mousefur." "Good idea," answered Whitestorm distractedly. He clearly had something on his mind. "Could Brightpaw go with the Dawn Patrol tomorrow?" he asked. "The experience will do her good. I haven't been keeping up with her training lately." Whitestorm's ear twitched, and, with a twinge of unease, Fireheart realized that the White Warrior had been spending more and more of his time with Bluestar. He couldn't help suspecting that Whitestorm was afraid of what the ThunderClan leader might do if he left her alone for too long. At the same time, Fireheart felt guiltily relieved that there was another cat in the clan, the most respected senior warrior, no less, who shared his concerns for their troubled leader. "Of course," he agreed. Whitestorm sat down beside Fireheart and looked around the clearing. "It's quiet this afternoon. Sandstorm and Brackenfur have taken the elders and queens to drink by the river. Patchpelt suggested bringing back moss soaked with water for Willowpelt and Goldenflower." Whitestorm nodded. "Perhaps they could share some with Bluestar. She seems reluctant to leave the camp." The old warrior lowered his voice. "She's been licking the dew from the leaves each morning, but she needs more than that in this heat." Fireheart felt a fresh wave of anxiety swell in his chest. "She seemed so much better the other day." "She is getting better all the time," the White Warrior assured him. "But still, His deep mew trailed away, and, although Fireheart felt shaken by the dark frown on the old warrior's face, there was no need to say any more. "I understand," he murmured. "I'll ask Patchpelt to take her some when they return." "Thank you." Whitestorm narrowed his eyes at Fireheart. "You're doing very well, you know," he remarked calmly. Fireheart sat up. "What do you mean? Being deputy? I know it hasn't been easy with Bluestar, the way she is, and the drought, but I doubt there's a cat in the clan who would deny that Bluestar made the right choice when she appointed you." "Apart from Darkstripe, Dustpelt, and half the elders," Fireheart responded silently. Then he realized he was being churlish, and he blinked gratefully at the White Warrior. "Thank you, Whitestorm," he purred. He couldn't help feeling encouraged by such high praise from this wise cat, whose opinion he valued as much as Bluestar's. "And I'm sorry about Cloudpaw," Whitestorm went on gently. "It must be very hard for you. After all, he was your kin, and I think it is too easy for clan-born cats to take that bond for granted." Fireheart was taken aback by the warrior's shrewdness. "Well, yes," he began hesitantly. "I do miss him. Not just because he was my kin. I truly believe he could have made a good warrior in the end." He glanced sideways at Whitestorm, half expecting the old cat to contradict him, but to his surprise the warrior was nodding. "He was a good hunter and a good friend to the other apprentices," Whitestorm agreed. but perhaps Darkline has a different destiny for him. I am no medicine cat. I cannot read the stars like Yellowfang of Cinderpelt, but I have always been willing to trust our warrior ancestors, wherever they might lead our clan. And that is what makes you such a noble warrior, Fireheart thought, filled with admiration for Whitestorm's loyalty to the warrior code. If Cloudpaw had had one whisker's worth of such understanding, perhaps things would have been very different. The sound of pebbles clattering outside the camp wall made both cats jump. Fireheart dashed to the camp entrance. Speckletail and the others were crashing down the rocky slope, sending grit and dirt crumbling around them. Their fur was bristling, and their eyes were filled with alarm. 2 legs, Speckletail panted as she reached the foot of the ravine. Fireheart looked up to where Brackenfur and Sandstorm were helping the eldest cats as they struggled down from boulder to boulder. "It's okay," Sandstorm called down. "We lost them." When they were all safely at the bottom, Brackenfur explained, his breath coming in frightened gasps.
"There was a group of young ones. They chased us."
"Aw, not the toddlers." Fireheart's fur bristled with alarm as a terrified mewing broke out among the other cats. "Are you all okay?" he meowed. Sandstorm looked around the group and nodded. "Good." Fireheart steadied himself with a deep breath. "Where were these 2 legs? Were they by the river?" "We hadn't even reached Sunning Rocks," answered Sandstorm. Her voice grew calmer as she got her breath back, and her eyes began to gleam with indignation. "They were loose in the woods, not on the usual 2-leg paths." Fireheart tried not to betray his alarm. 2 legs rarely ventured this deep into the forest. "We shall have to wait till dark to fetch water," he decided out loud. "Do you think they'll be gone by then?" asked One Eye shakily. "Why would they stay?" Fireheart tried to sound reassuring despite his private doubts. Who could predict what a 2-leg might do? "But what about Willowpelt and Goldenflower?" fretted Speckletail. "They'll need water before then." "I'll go and fetch some," offered Sandstorm. "No," meowed Fireheart. "I'll go." Fetching water for Willowpelt would give him a perfect opportunity to take Cinderpelt's advice and check for himself that the ShadowClan cats and their sickness had gone from the cave beneath the old oak. He nodded to Sandstorm. "I need you to stay at the top of the ravine and look out for 2 legs." One Eye let out an anxious mew. "I'm sure they'll have turned back by now," Fireheart soothed the elder, "but you'll be safe with Sandstorm on guard." He looked into the orange she-cat's sparkling emerald eyes and knew he spoke the truth. "I'll come with you," meowed Brackenfur. Fireheart shook his head. He had to make this journey alone to avoid any other cats finding out about Cinderpelt's foolish good deed. "You'll need to guard the camp with Whitestorm," he told the pale ginger warrior, "and I want you to report what you saw in the forest just now to Bluestar. I'll carry back as much moss as I can. The rest of you will have to wait till sunset." Fireheart and Sandstorm climbed the ravine together, cautiously sniffing the air as they approached the top. There was no scent of 2 legs here. "Be careful," whispered Sandstorm as Fireheart prepared to head into the forest. He licked the top of her head. "I will," he promised softly. The friendship to forehead kiss pipeline is crazy. Like, okay, I see you. So the 2-leg scent is stale, so Fireheart heads towards the RiverClan border, still hoping to see Graystripe. There are no signs of any other cats, so he decides to check the oak tree where the ShadowClan cats were held. He stops to remark the border every few paw steps before approaching the oak. The sickness smell has gone, but he decides to take a quick look inside, crouching low so he can see inside the tree. Quote, he let out a startled gasp as a weight dropped onto his back and claws grasped his sides. Fear and rage pulsed through him and he yowled, twisting violently in an attempt to throw off his attacker. But the cat who had ambushed him kept a firm hold. Fireheart braced himself for the pain of thorn-sharp claws on his flanks, but the paws that clutched him were wide and soft, their claws unsheathed. Then a familiar scent filled his nostrils, a scent overlaid now with the odors of RiverClan, but recognizable all the same. "Graystripe," he meowed joyfully. "I thought you would never come to see me," purred Graystripe. Fireheart felt his old friend slip from his back and realized that Graystripe was dripping wet with river water. His own orange pelt was soaked from their tussle. He shook himself and stared in amazement at the Grey Warrior.
"You swam across the river?"
he meowed in disbelief. Every cat in ThunderClan knew how much Graystripe hated getting his thick fur wet. Graystripe gave himself a quick shake, and the water spattered easily from his pelt. His long fur, which used to soak up water like moss, looked sleek and glossy.
"It's slicker than Glengen the sipping styles,"
he pointed out.
"Besides, my fur doesn't seem to hold the water as much anymore. One of the advantages of eating fish, I suppose."
"Okay, fish oil supplements. Slay, we love a healthy king,"
"About the only one, I should think,"
answered Fireheart, screwing up his face. He couldn't imagine how the strong flavor of fish could compare to the subtle, musky flavors of ThunderClan's forest prey.
"That's not so bad once I get used to it,"
meowed Graystripe. He blinked warmly at Fireheart.
"You look well."
"You too."
Fireheart purred back.
"How is everyone? Is Dustbolt still being a pain? How's Bluestar?"
"Dustbolt's fine.
Fireheart began, and then hesitated.
Bluestar is..."
He searched for words, unsure how much to tell his old friend about the ThunderClan leader.
"What's up?"
asked Graystripe, his eyes narrowing. Fireheart realized that the Grey Warrior knew him too well to miss his reaction. His ears flicked self-consciously.
"Bluestar's all right, isn't she?"
Graystripe's voice was thick with concern.
"She's fine."
Fireheart assured him quickly, relieved. It was his anxiety about the ThunderClan leader that Graystripe had detected, not his wariness of his old friend.
"But she hasn't really been her old self lately. Not since Tiger Claw."
He trailed off uncertainly. Graystripe frowned.
Have you seen that little poison possum teal?
A poison pause. Fantastic. Fireheart shook his head.
Not a sign of him. I don't know how Bluestar would react if she saw him again.
She'd scratch his eyes out to final her.
Purred Graystripe.
I can't imagine anything keeping Bluestar down for long.
I wish that were true.
Fireheart thought sadly. He looked into Graystripe's curious eyes, knowing with a pang of sadness that his desire to confide in his old friend had been an impossible dream. Graystripe was a member of RiverClan now, and Fireheart had to accept with a heavy heart that he couldn't share the details of his leader's weakness with a cat from another clan. And he also realized that he wasn't prepared to tell Graystripe about Cloudpaw's disappearance. At least not yet. Fireheart tried to tell himself this was because he didn't want to worry Graystripe when his friend was unable to help anyway. But he suspected his silence might have more to do with pride. He didn't want Graystripe to know that he had failed as a mentor for a second time, so soon after Cinderpelt's accident.
What's it like in RiverClan?
He meowed, deliberately changing the subject. Graystripe shrugged.
Not much different from FlanderClan. Some of them are friendly, some of them are grumpy, some of them are funny, some of them are... well, they're just like normal clan cats.
Fireheart couldn't help envying the Grey Warrior for sounding so relaxed. Clearly Graystripe's new life didn't carry the burden of responsibility that Fireheart had to deal with now that he was deputy. And part of him still felt a small thorn of resentment that had mingled with his grief since Graystripe had left ThunderClan. Fireheart knew his friend could not have abandoned his kits. He just wished he'd fought harder to keep them in ThunderClan. Fireheart pushed away these unfriendly thoughts.
How are your kits?
He asked. Graystripe purred proudly.
They're wonderful,
he declared.
The she-kit is just like her mother, every bit as beautiful and with the same temper. She gives her den mother quite a bit of trouble, but every cat loves her, especially Kirketstar.
The Tom is more easygoing, happy whatever he's doing.
Like his father,
remarked Fireheart.
And almost as handsome,
boasted Graystripe, his eyes gleaming with amusement. I'm glad he hasn't lost his humor. Fireheart felt a familiar rush of joy at being with his old friend.
I miss you,
he meowed, suddenly overwhelmed with longing to have Graystripe back at the camp, to hunt and fight beside him again.
Why don't you come home?
When will my husband return from the war? Graystripe shook his wide gray head.
I can't leave my kids,
he meowed. Fireheart couldn't help the look of disbelief that flashed in his eyes. After all, kits were raised by queens, not their fathers. And Graystripe went on quickly.
Oh, they are very well cared for in the nursery. They would be safe and happy with RiverGlen. But I don't think I could bear to be away from them. They remind me too much of Silverstream.
You miss her that much?
I loved her,
Graystripe answered simply. Fireheart felt a pang of jealousy until he remembered the sorrow he still felt whenever he awoke from a dream of Spotted Leaf. He reached forward and touched Graystripe's cheek with his nose. Only StarClan knew if he might have done the same thing for Spotted Leaf.
Or Sandstorm?
Whispered a voice deep in Fireheart's mind. The way he has 3 love interests right now is insane. Graystripe nudged him back, disturbing Fireheart's wandering thoughts and almost unbalancing him.
Enough soppy stuff,
he meowed as if he could read his friend's mind.
You didn't really come here to see me, did you?
Fireheart was caught off guard.
Well, not entirely,
he confessed.
You were looking for their Shadowland cats, right?
How did you know about them?
Fireheart demanded, stunned.
How could I not know?
Exclaimed Graystripe.
The stench they were giving off. ShadowClan caps small bad enough of their own, but sick ones. Yuck.
Does the rest of RiverClan know about them?
Fireheart was alarmed to think that the other clans could have found out ThunderClan was sheltering ShadowClan cats again, and ones tainted by sickness at that.
Not as far as I know,
Graystripe assured him.
I offered to do all the betraying
This end of the river. The other cats just thought I was homesick and indulged me. I think they were secretly hoping I'd go back to ThunderClan if I got enough of the forest sense.
But why would you protect the ShadowClan cats like that?
Fireheart asked, puzzled.
I came over and spoke to them soon after you arrived.
Graystripe explained.
They told me that Cinderpelt had hidden them here. I reckoned that if Cinderpelt had something to do with it, then you must know. Sheltering a couple of sickly flea bags is just the sort of soft-hearted thing you do.
Well, I wasn't exactly thrilled when I found out.
Fireheart admitted.
But I bet you let her off.
Fireheart shrugged.
Well, yes.
Well, yes. That's been the phrase of this episode. Well, yes.
She always could wrap you around her palm.
Meowed Graystripe affectionately. Make that 4 love interests.
When did they leave?
Fireheart felt a wave of relief that Cinderpelt had kept her promise.
I saw one hunting the side of the river a couple of days, since.
A couple of days ago.
Fireheart was alarmed to hear that the ShadowClan cats were still there so recently. Had Cinderpelt decided to nurse them until they were well enough to travel after all? His fur prickled with irritation at the thought, but he trusted that she had not made the decision lightly. He was just grateful to StarClan that they hadn't bumped into a water-gathering patrol from ThunderClan. They were gone now, and with any luck so was the threat of sickness.
Luck.
Meowed Graystripe.
I have to go. I'm on hunting duty, and I promised I'd watch a couple of apprentices this afternoon.
Have you got an apprentice of your own?
Fireheart asked. Graystripe met his gaze steadily.
I think RiverClan is willing to trust me to train the warriors,
he murmured. Fireheart couldn't tell if it was amusement or regret that made his old friend's whiskers twitch.
I'll see you sometime.
Graystripe meowed, giving Fireheart a shove with his muzzle.
Definitely.
Fireheart felt a black hole of sadness yawn in his belly as the Grey Warrior turned to leave. Spotted Leaf, Graystripe, Cloudpaw. Was Fireheart destined to lose every cat he grew close to?
Take care.
He called. He watched Graystripe pad through the ferns to the edge of the river and wade in confidently. The warrior's broad shoulders glided through the water, leaving a gentle wake as he swam with strongly churning paws. Fireheart shook his head, wishing he could scatter his troubled thoughts as easily as Graystripe's pelt had shed water after a swim. Then he turned away and headed into the trees. That's the end of chapter 14. Poor Fireheart. I mean, yeah, he's, other than Sandstorm and Cinderpelt, he's kind of alone. Like, he doesn't have his besties with him. Moving on to chapter 15, the last one for today. Fireheart returns to camp with a ball of soaking moss for the queens. The clan is sharing tongues as the sun sets. Brindleface is getting another group together to fetch water. Small Ear is pressing them to stay alert, pointing out a nick in his ear he got from an owl as an apprentice. Fireheart feels relaxed by the usual clan life, entering the nursery and giving the moss to Goldenflower and Willowpelt. Quote,
"Thanks, Fireheart,"
meowed Willowpelt.
There'll be more after supper.
Fireheart promised as the two queens began to lick the precious drops of water from the clump of moss. He tried to ignore the eyes of Tigerclaw's Kit gleaming hungrily from the shadows as Goldenflower pressed the moss with her muzzle to squeeze out another mouthful.
Brindleface is going to lead the other elders to the river once the sun is set and the woods are clear of two legs.
Fireheart explained. Goldenflower licked her lips.
"It's been a while since some of them have been out in the forest after dark."
She commented.
I think Small Ear is looking forward to it.
Purred Fireheart.
He was telling stories about the owl that used to hunt near Sunning Rocks. Poor Halftail looked a bit nervous.
"A little excitement will do him good."
Willowpelt remarked.
"I wish I could go with them. A scrap with an owl would be just the thing to stretch my legs."
Do you miss being a warrior?
Fireheart asked, surprised. Willowpelt looked so comfortable lying in the nursery while her fast-growing kit scrambled over her. It hadn't occurred to him she might hanker after her old life.
"Wouldn't you?"
Willowpelt challenged him.
Well, yes,
Stammered Fireheart.
but you have your kits.
Willowpelt twisted her head to pick up a tiny tortoiseshell and white she-kit that had tumbled off her flank. She dropped it between her forepaws and gave it a lick.
"Oh yes, I have my kits.
She agreed.
But I miss running through the forest, hunting for my own prey, and patrolling our borders.
She licked the kit again and added,
I'm looking forward to taking these three out into the forest for the first time."
They look like they'll make fine warriors.
Fireheart meowed. The bittersweet memory of Cloudpaw's first expedition, when he went into the snowbound forest and came back with a vole, rose in Fireheart's mind, and he blinked. He dipped his head to the queens and turned to leave, glancing furtively at Tigerclaw's kit. He couldn't help wondering what sort of warrior it would be.
Bye.
He mumbled as he squeezed out of the nursery. He could smell the tempting scents of the fresco pile wafting from nearby, but there was one more thing he had to do before he could settle down for his evening meal. He padded across the clearing to Yellowfang's den. The elderly medicine cat was resting in the evening sun, her fur dull and unkempt as usual. She lifted her muzzle to greet him.
"Hello, Fireheart.
She rasped.
What are you doing here?"
Looking for Cinderpelt.
Answered Fireheart.
"Why? What do you want now?"
Cinderpelt's mew sounded from inside her fern nest, and her gray head popped out.
"Is that any way to greet your deputy?"
Yellowfang scolded, her eyes glinting with amusement.
"It is when he disturbs my sleep,"
retorted Cinderpelt, clambering out.
"He seems determined I shouldn't get any rest these days."
Yellowfang narrowed her eyes at Fireheart.
"Have you two been up to something I should know about?"
"Are you questioning your deputy?"
Cinderpelt teased. Yellowfang purred.
"I know you've been up to something,"
she meowed.
"but I won't pry. All I know is that my apprentice seemed back to her old self again. Which is good, because she was no use to any cat while she was moping around like a damp mushroom."
Fireheart was very relieved to see the two cats sparring with each other as they had done when Cinderpelt was first apprenticed to the medicine cat, before Silverstream had died. He shifted his paws awkwardly on the sun-baked ground. He had come to tell Cinderpelt that the ShadowClan cats had gone, but with Yellowfang here it was not easy.
"It's strange,"
Yellowfang growled, looking pointedly at Fireheart.
"I suddenly feel like fetching another mouse from the fresco pile."
Fireheart blinked gratefully at the old medicine cat.
"Anything you want, Cinderpelt?"
she called over her shoulder as she padded toward the tunnel. Cinderpelt shook her head.
"Okay, I'll be back in a moment."
Yellowfang rasped.
"Or maybe two."
She is the chill grandma everybody needs. When she had disappeared, Fireheart meowed quietly.
I checked on the ShadowClan cats. They've gone.
"I told you they would,"
replied Cinderpelt.
But they didn't go until a couple of days ago.
Fireheart added.
"It wouldn't have done them any good to travel any sooner,"
mewed Cinderpelt.
"And I had to make sure they'd learned how to make the herb mixture before they went."
Fireheart twitched his tail at Cinderpelt's stubbornness, but he couldn't bring himself to argue with her. He knew she believed with all her heart that she had done the right thing in caring for them, and part of him agreed it had been worth the risk.
"I did tell them to leave, you know,"
she meowed, her tone losing some of its certainty.
I believe you.
Fireheart agreed gently.
It was my responsibility to make sure they left, not yours.
Cinderpelt looked up at him curiously.
"How do you know when they left?"
Graystripe told me.
"You spoke to Graystripe? Is he okay?"
He's fine.
Fireheart purred.
He swims like a fish now.
"You're kidding,"
mewed Cinderpelt.
"I'd never have expected that."
Me neither.
Fireheart agreed, then stopped, embarrassed, when his belly growled with hunger.
Go and eat.
Cinderpelt ordered.
You better hurry up before Yellowfang demolishes the entire pile.
Fireheart leaned down and licked Cinderpelt's ears.
See you later.
He mewed. So Fireheart takes a pigeon from the fresh kill pile and looks around for a place to eat. He spots Sandstorm, and his heart races, and, quote, suddenly it didn't matter that she wasn't tortoiseshell, and that her eyes were pale green, not amber. Fireheart looked at the pale ginger warrior, the pigeon hanging limply from his jaws, and remembered what Cinderpelt had told him. Live in the present, let go of the past. He knew Spotted Leaf would always remain in his heart, but he couldn't deny the way the fur tingled along his spine at the sight of Sandstorm. And as he begins to settle next to her, she begins to purr. She's happy to see him. Until, quote, suddenly a terrible caterwauling made Fireheart jerk up his head. Sandstorm scrambled to her paws as Mousefur and Thornpaw thundered into the clearing. Their fur was matted with blood, and Thornpaw was limping badly. Fireheart swallowed his mouthful quickly and heaved himself up.
What happened? Where's Running Wind?
The other cats gathered behind him, hissing with fear, their fur bristling as they prepared for trouble.
I don't know. We were attacked.
Panted Mousefur.
By who?
Fireheart demanded. Mousefur shook her head.
We couldn't see. We were in the shadows.
But what about their scent?
Too near the Thunderpath. Couldn't tell.
Answered Thornpaw, his breath coming in short gasps. Fireheart looked at the apprentice, who was swaying unsteadily on his paws.
Go and see Yellowfang.
He ordered.
Whitestorm.
He called to the white warrior, who was already hurrying from Blue Star's den.
I want you to come with us.
He turned to Mousefur.
Lead us to where this happened.
Sandstorm and Dustpelt looked expectantly at Fireheart, waiting to receive orders.
You two stay here and guard the camp. It might be a trap to lure our warriors away. It's happened before.
With Blue Star on her last life, Fireheart knew he had to leave the camp well protected. He charged out of the camp with Whitestorm at his side and Mousefur panting behind them. Together they scrambled up the ravine and raced into the forest. Fireheart slowed his pace when he saw that Mousefur was struggling to keep up.
Quick as you can,
he urged. He knew she must be in pain after the fight, but they had to find Running Wind. He had a horrible feeling that this attack might have something to do with ShadowClan. Little Cloud and Whitethroat had been in ThunderClan territory so recently. Had they tricked him into leading his clan into danger after all? He headed instinctively toward the Thunderpath.
No,
called Mousefur.
It's this way.
She brushed past him, quickening her pace, and veered toward four trees. Fireheart and Whitestorm sped after her. As they raced through the trees, Fireheart realized he had been this way before. This was the trail Little Cloud and Whitethroat had followed after Blue Star had sent them away the first time. Had a ShadowClan raiding party come through the stone tunnel under the Thunderpath? Mousefur skidded to a halt between two towering ash trees. The Thunderpath droned in the distance, its foul stench drifting through the undergrowth. Ahead, Fireheart saw Running Wind's lean brown body lying on the ground, ominously still. A black and white Tom was bending over the unmoving warrior. With a jolt, Fireheart realized that it was Whitethroat. The ShadowClan warrior's eyes stretched wide as he saw the approaching cats. He began to back away from Running Wind, his legs stumbling with shock.
He's dead,
he wailed. Oh, sugar honey iced tea. Not Running Wind, he was so nice. Fireheart's ears flattened as rage pulsed through him. Was this how ShadowClan warriors repaid another clan's kindness? Without stopping to see what Whitestorm and Mousefur were doing, he let out a furious screech and flung himself at Whitethroat, who shrank away, hissing. Fireheart knocked the ShadowClan warrior backward, and Whitethroat landed limply on the ground, offering no resistance as Fireheart loomed over him. Fireheart stared down, confused, as his enemy crouched helplessly beneath him, his eyes narrowed into terrified slits. While he hesitated, Whitethroat darted away and bolted into a tangle of brambles. Fireheart chased after him, ignoring the thorns that tore at his fur. The ShadowClan warrior must be heading for the stone tunnel. He pushed onward and caught a glimpse of the tip of Whitethroat's tail as the Tom struggled out of the brambles onto the grass verge. Fireheart emerged a moment later and saw Whitethroat poised on the edge of the Thunderpath. Fireheart hurled toward him, expecting Whitethroat to flee to the tunnel, but Whitethroat took one look at the ThunderClan warrior and raced straight onto the Thunderpath. Fireheart watched in horror as the terrified cat scrambled blindly across the hard gray surface. A deafening roar sounded in his ears. Fireheart shrank back, screwing up his face as the foul-smelling wind of the monster blasted his fur. When it had passed, he blinked open his eyes and shook the grit from its ear fur. A ragged shape was lying motionless on the Thunderpath. The monster had hit Whitethroat. For a long heartbeat, Fireheart froze, flooded by dreadful memories of Cinderpelt's accident. Then he saw Whitethroat stir. Fireheart couldn't leave any cat out there. Not even a ShadowClan enemy that had killed one of ThunderClan's bravest warriors. He peered up and down the Thunderpath. There were no monsters in sight. He scurried across to where Whitethroat lay. The Tom looked smaller than ever, his white chest glistening with blood like fire in the rays of the slowly sinking sun. Fireheart knew that moving the cat would only hasten his death. Trembling with shock, he looked down at the warrior Cinderpelt had taken such trouble to care for, in secret from the rest of her clan.
Why did you attack our patrol?
He whispered. He leaned down as Whitethroat opened his mouth to speak, but the warrior's gurgling mew was drowned as a monster roared past terrifyingly close, sending a wave of fumes and grit over the two cats. Fireheart sank his claws as well as he could into the unyielding surface and crouched closer to the ShadowClan warrior. Whitethroat opened his mouth again, releasing a thin trickle of blood. He swallowed painfully, sending a juddering spasm the length of his body. But before he could speak, his eyes focused on a point over Fireheart's shoulder, back toward the woods of ThunderClan territory. Fireheart watched as Whitethroat's eyes glittered with fear before they glazed over for the last time. Dang, double homicide! He spun around to see what had filled Whitethroat's final moments with such terror. His heart lurched when he saw who stood at the edge of the Thunderpath, the dark warrior who had prowled through so many of his dreams. Tigerclaw. He's back! And that's where we're gonna end for today. Wow, he's back. We are so back, but not in a good way. He's back on his BS again, I see. I guess now he's just not afraid to murder cats. Wow, what a cliffhanger. Cliffhanger? I don't know if that's a cliffhanger. What an ending to today's episode. Lots happening. Thank you for joining me. As always, you can find the links to the social media accounts in the description of this episode, and you can follow those accounts to get updates on when new episodes are out and any other updates with the podcast. And I will see you guys next week when we see if Fireheart confronts Tigerclaw or not. May StarClan light your path.